perspective. Diana?
Hi, so we'll start with Radhika because she was the first speaker.
Great, thanks, Diana. So I'm not sure how I could do justice to the conversation that we had just now, but thank you to everybody that was in my room. I think we before we got into discussing the two questions that were posed, we also spoke about just the idea of organizing and what that means for people. And we touched upon, I thought, I'm just gonna come up with a couple of themes that came out, and then just leave you with that in terms of food for thought, maybe. I think one thing everyone touched upon in some way or the other was the idea of empathy and how important that is to any kind of organizing. Unless you actually want to band for a particular cause, unless you're passionate for a cause, whatever that might be. It might be climate action, it might be because something is wrong with the government. There has to be something that touches a chord in you for you to be able to empathize with the situation, to say I'm on board, right? And along with that, there was an interesting comment made about continuity. And someone shared about the case in Nigeria where a lot of young people have come out, and then the backlash against that movement was horrific, almost fatal to a lot of people, right? So how do you then continue movements, and what kind of support's required in order to continue organizing is very critical, so that it doesn't become something that's just triggered by an event and ends with an event, right? So how do you have continuity to that? We did touch upon issues around masculinity, especially given today's theme, and I think that's another whole topic to unpack, so I wouldn't say too much about it, but I think there's a lot of undertone in terms of women's organizing and what role do men play in that? And then if it is general organizing, how do you get women in leadership places in that? But there's a lot to be said there, and I am not gonna pretend to be able to do justice to that topic. So I will stop there. There were also, I think, many things drawn, some great examples shared also from the US about 2017, the women's marches, and how that actually transcended through generations and through genders, and you could see all kinds of people coming out for the same cause, to speak out. Yeah, I will, and I think just one last thing which I didn't touch upon. I think the idea of youth, and how, especially today, the idea of using different means to communicate and to organize. So the power of social media, I think, is something that cannot be understated in today's day, especially around organizing, and what a powerful tool that can be for people, even in places where maybe organizing is not allowed because of certain restrictions, that the power that social media can actually hold in cases like that. And I think the Arab Revolution is a great example of how they actually in Tunisia started that, with women actually using social media at the first place to say, come at this place, come protest, come meet me. So lots of great reflections from our group. I hope I did justice to all the people that were in my group, but we had some great discussions, so thank you very much.
Diana, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. It started freezing. Okay, so Mrs. Faley.
Okay, I hope I can switch to my group, please. The first thing was suggested, and this keeps coming up, is how can we take what's happening with connecting the dots to so that other people know. And the idea was to, well, writing a newsletter and people writing out their ideas about changes that have occurred and that can occur. Very strong discussion about networking and the importance of networking, and women developing their strength and their leadership, their ability to speak out and to feel strong to speak out. And I mentioned the idea of women being mentored in a very simple way. When someone, I see someone who is quite young and inexperienced in a position, to encourage them to reach out and to get involved in different activities and to grow and change in that. We ended up with just we talked about education, talked about elementary education, and then I brought up middle school, and that seems to be the time when both males and females feel very insecure, but the males seem to be the ones who throw the ball to hit the girl and the girl begins to think, oh, I'm nothing at this point. And so the teachers and people, adults standing by, and I don't see this happening, to kind of navigate through that. All people feel very awkward, and it's very difficult. And that's a time when the women can learn to be strong and speak out. I think a lot of that's happening with sports. I do see it happening with sports, and also through there are different organizations that have leadership, leaders clubs and that sort of thing. So it's just a big work in progress, but I do see changes. I do see changes occurring. So thank you very much.
Natalie?
Thanks, Diana. We had a great room. Our folks were from New York and Philadelphia primarily. And we started our conversation with really talking about, in terms of organizing, what your role is and what your strength might be. And our first contributor said, I am not the strategist, but I will bring the energy and the bravery. And I think that's why I'm in New York City, because this is surely the melting pot of many underrepresented people and many causes. And I am open, I am ready, and I am willing. And I think that's one very strong pillar of understanding organizing, and how to be a part of organizing. You may not lead it, but there's a role for you to play. We then talked about being in position to provide access. And so our second contributor, also a New Yorker, is actually in healthcare, but oversees program direction and is also a faculty advisor to students. A lot of these students are of Pan-Asian descent and were recently very, very disturbed by the attacks on people who are Asian in terms of their features. And so, talking about making a safe space is a way to help them come together and speak. That space may not be physical space, but it's invitation to conversation and sharing so that they can unpack, or it's guidance on how to use your voice in advocating for safety, or whatever your concerns are. And so, it was good to really talk about the fact that when you're in a certain position, you actually can be a wonderful facilitator to help to organize those who are in need of direction and guidance and reassurance, which is then another very important pillar of organizing and coming together. Then we talked about bravery, what that looks like and feels like. Our opening speaker shared stories that really helped us understand that women in certain positions risk their lives at times to organize because they had no choice, or they needed to respond to protect children, family, life, limb. And we recognize then that your experience and the type of bravery that is called for is dictated by your environment. My bravery or my situation is not yours, but it still requires you to move. It still requires action. It requires you to use your voice and act. And your voice could be writing, posting, showing up That bravery could be not sitting still. Even if you stand up, it's a demonstration that I am not comfortable with what is happening and what you're saying, but also sharing stories and telling and talking. Today, I think some of us are recognizing, I think I can be a little braver if the ladies can organize in a way where they're dressing up their daughters to look like sons because they have to be there to tell their story. I can stand up in the next meeting and say, hell no, I'm not doing that, or I don't think that's right. It makes you a little braver when you share. And so not underestimating or measuring anyone's bravery over another. It all works and it's all required. Your bravery is called to action. So don't think that, you know what, it's not a big deal. Who cares if, you know, you're the opening speaker or whatever. Speak up, use your voice. Bravery is also a muscle. You have to use it to get comfortable with it. There is reluctance, but once you start using it, like your voice, it develops memory, and it's easier than the next time and the next time and the next time. It takes you a little farther. It's also a little contagious, right? So your bravery is a good thing. And then we talked about organizing in a way based on your knowledge, using your gifts and talents to share education, right? Bridging the knowledge gap, which sometimes people fall into, and they're not able to then advocate effectively or be regarded as authentic and real because they don't have the words or they don't have the data. And so teaching, we had a teacher in the room who really said, you know, when I was back in business school and we had our teams of 6, there was 1 woman in each team. Today, there is a larger percentage of women in business school. Hooray! But we need to equip them with the language and the information for them to be able to take it back to families and friends and to talk about how things should work. Because I know based on data that this is a gap, this is a problem, this is a pattern. And so sharing our gifts and talents to level the playing field helps to bridge the gap and brings people together differently. So groups of friends now understand what is fair in terms of a negotiation and what is not. They understand perspective from country to country, looking at males versus females, how they're treated, and they can look at data and talk about things factually. And so at the end of the day, we see that we all have the ability to plant seeds of organizing and bringing different groups of people together just by virtue of the things we know, the way we like to lead and share, our recognition that it's important for us to use our voice and to be braver in situations, the fact that we need to share stories and not just keep them to ourselves. And we certainly are excited about all the stories we heard today. And we thank our opening speaker for getting us rolling. Hopefully we've all left with some bit of commitment to help organize for change.
Thank you. Okay, so I've been asked to do a closing note speech related to the topics that were the theme of today. I am Diana Mohi. I have a family law and divorce practice, and for the majority of my 8 years of practice, I was in New York City, and that's where I got, you know, a big foundation of what I do in the legal sphere. And I work with families that, you know, as you know, they are transitioning to other chapters of their lives, or to facilitate conflicts that have arisen.
Diana, sorry, we just lost your audio. Diana? Diana, if you can hear me.
That was-
Oh, can we rewind a few, 30 seconds?
Sorry. Okay, so when I went to school, I didn't plan to go to be a lawyer initially, and I became the plan was to become a doctor, and I was going to help people that way. But it soon became clear that that was not really the path for me, and so I decided to become a lawyer. And I was grateful to have the experience of like having some internships at Legal Aid and Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. And I also at one point even had experience working with a judge in the juvenile courts of Detroit. And, it's definitely an eye-opening experience. I mean, a lot of it is, poverty takes a big, it's a big part of this. Like, it's obviously I've seen in my practice people with money, people without money, but, poverty is a big stressor, on people. And it really contributes to the heart of the problems in family law, which are a breakdown of the family. And I felt like it was a good basis for my practice to see the criminal aspect of this, and what happens that contributes to all the ailments that we have in society. In my practice right now, I believe it was really good that I have an undergraduate degree that's a psychology based degree, because a lot of it is like, you're helping your client through a very difficult time in their life. And there's a family unit that's breaking apart, or they're constantly in flux because they can't, once you have a child with someone, you can't separate yourself from them completely. You're still, in a sense, a family unit, but not anymore. You're just a modified family unit. And, and so a lot of the issues that I deal with these parties is they're the way they are dealing with each other anyway has led to the fruition of, for example, the divorce. And a lot of it is psychological. It's about their perception of the situation, and and what they think of the other party, and all that kind of thing. And I think that translates to our big theme here with the society. Like, when there's like all these conflicts and things, and it really goes to how people are perceiving each other. And we know about those things, about the race bias, the sex bias, and all those kinds of things related to social justice. But I think it's really important that we analyze, like, just as a individual, like what are the things that we're consuming that are making us have a perception of people in our environment in a certain way. Is there something that's blocking us from communicating and having a relationship with a particular party because we have an idea about them, because, like, even based on their ideology? I mean, obviously it's been a big theme in this last year. There was an election, like there's people with very differing ideologies. But, it becomes a problem when when people their families are being torn apart over it, And so and people have other, like I feel that, we've been a year in lockdown, so that's created a stressor on us all. And that, that pressure, the issues are coming out, but there's still a root core to that issue that can be kind of addressed. And that is going, what is the content that we're ingesting? Are we watching negative news media all day? Are we getting on social media and being negative all day? And then like getting on some kind of a group chat that there's people feeding us negative views about other people. I don't care what, race, like sex or whatever. And, so I feel that my call to action for everyone today is to really just, take charge of your environment and what your thoughts are and the words that you're using to communicate with other people, because you can perpetuate a huge change and a large ripple effect. I sincerely believe by paying attention to, what are you brainwashing yourself with? Because you're going to interact with another person, they're going to interact with someone else. And that really does like cause a ripple effect in the world. And so therefore I really strongly believe that we individually can each, and together obviously cumulatively make a big impact in making this world a more positive place.
Thank you so much, Diana.
My pleasure.